Sins of a Solar Empire 2 is officially out today on Steam, which I'll link to in the description. But on top of the DLC list for the first few expansions being available via a content pass listed on their site, with some interesting names like the Harbinger expansion, which we'll talk about more when there's actual details available, there's one area which I really think you should be excited for the future of Sins 2 content, and that is modding. Since Rebellion, the prior game in the series, is home to some really fantastic mods, and there's every reason to expect this will be the case going forwards with Sins 2. Basically, no matter what your favorite sci-fi series is, whether it's Star Trek, Star Wars, Stargate, Halo, even Mass Effect, Sins 1 almost certainly had a high-quality mod you'd be interested in. In the case of Star Wars, 3 or 4. Star Trek Armada 3 and Sins of the Prophets in particular achieved a lot of respect not just as Sins mods, but as some of the best or most cohesive modding projects you could find for any game, and especially covering the franchises that they cover. Since Sins 2 has only just come out, it'll take time to build up any large mods like those, so don't expect a day one release for Total Conversion mods, which is a mistake I made when I was 12 or 13 waiting for Empire at War mods to release on release day for the game. I do know that several of the teams involved in making Sins 1 mods have been actively preparing plans for another installment of their mods on Sins 2, and with any game release you can expect an influx of new people who want to learn how to make their own mods, expanding that pool even more. In the meantime though, checking out some of those projects for Rebellion is definitely still worth it. But especially for mods which converted to the Sins Remastered shader mod, it should be a bit easier to reuse some of their assets from Sins 1 in Sins 2. There's still a lot of work to do those conversions, but they're at least part of the way there. A few months ago, the developers of Sins 2 very kindly answered some of my questions related to what mod tools will look like for the game, which I covered in its own video, and I'll link to that in the description as well. But the short version is that modding should be more accessible than ever. The model rigging in particular seems far more accessible than it was in Sins 1, which required a pretty specific, hard to find, and honestly annoying to use program. But now you'll just need the tool provided by the devs, and even freely available modeling programs like Blender should be able to export models that can be used by it. Blender is a fantastic free tool. It's what my own mod team for Empire Or Expanded and Ascendancy has used to make our models, and the internet is littered with tutorials on how to use it, so if you're looking to get into Sins 2 modding, then picking up Blender would be a great way to start. Our team was trying to do a Blender plugin for Sins 1, which is where we mod for Ascendancy, but we were ultimately unsuccessful, so this alone is a huge convenient step forward. And I've spent some time digging around in the other Sins 2 files, and everything just seems a lot easier to work with in general. The developers during the time of Sins 1 were always very communicative with modders and very open to requests we'd have. There was quite a bit done specifically to help modders a decade or more after the game released, and modder requests were taken into account even more in the development of Sins 2. So I fully expect the support from Stardock and Ironclad will remain just as good, if not better, as we go on from the actual release of the game. One of the biggest things I always felt was lacking with Sins 1 modding was a Steam Workshop style auto-updater, since Sins 1 was pretty oriented towards balanced multiplayer matches. So having quick balance patches that could be iterated on would be more helpful than making everyone upload and download a new mod every month. Well, that unfortunately didn't happen with Rebellion. Sins 2 is supported on mod.io, doing basically what I'd hoped for, and it's already full of some smaller scale mods to customize your experience, even if none of those let you blow up the USS Enterprise just yet. As further evidence of the commitment within Sins 2 to supporting the modding community, several of the developers hired to work on the game in various positions were Sins 1 modders. So while existing developers like the Frasers were always very communicative and receptive to whatever modders were asking for, there's an added level of modder perspective layered on top of that, which I'm sure has led to and will lead to even more support for modders in the future. That's it for today though. I'm still hoping to get some Sins 2 multiplayer matches going on in the near future, and I'll definitely be playing some of the bigger mods as they come out. Let me know in the comments what you're thinking of the game so far, and if there's any particular universe you'd like to see covered in a Total Conversion mod for the game. If you want to see more Sins 2 coverage, remember to like and subscribe.